Welcome back to r/LegalAdvice, where people ask questions, get advice, and we get satisfaction. If you are new around here, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to join our awesome community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. This one is titled, "I did not invite the neighbor's child to my kid's birthday party, so she called CPS and said my husband does unspeakable things to my daughter." First off, I am in Kentucky. This is a throwaway because I don't want this associated with my regular account. This is kind of long, but I am so lost right now. And unbelievably upset, so again, sorry for the length. And by the way guys, this is indeed a very long story, I would say around 15 to 20 minutes, so please be sure to stick until the end. I live in a subdivision of duplexes with tons of really awesome neighbors and lots of kids that my children love to play with. The biggest issue is the neighbor with whom I share walls. We were cordial with each other until the day we caught her child abusing my dog. When she told her son it was okay right in front of us, it ignited an argument. Ever since then, we've just had nothing to do with them, we don't fight with them or even really acknowledge them much at all, cautious neutral essentially. It was not long after that situation that I found out that this neighbor is bat crap crazy. She has been absolutely terrorizing people in the neighborhood. Most recently, she ruined a woman down the street's life by claiming this woman threatened to kill her. She actually claimed this lady was pounding on her windows and standing in the front yard that we share with her, waving a knife and threatening to chop up her kids. The problem with this is that none of it was true. We have security cameras on both the front and back of the property. There was no footage of these supposed incidents, and my husband is a stay-at-home dad and said nothing like that has ever occurred. If it had, we would have witnessed it or caught it on camera. When this was all in the works, she even asked me to call in a false police report on this lady. In the end, this woman was charged with terroristic threatening, lost her job, her home, and flunked out of her college classes since she missed finals, and her kid was sent to live with his dad who did not take him to school and now has to repeat a grade, and her house was robbed while she was in jail. What started the initial feud that led to this woman's life being ruined? The neighbor calling CPS, making false claims because she thinks all parents but her beat their kids and she needs to get custody of them all. I wish I were joking, but she has actually told my child she was going to come live with her. My daughter told me this. This woman is dangerous. This is what I am dealing with. Today was my daughter's birthday party with her classmates. The other day, this neighbor's son purposely pushed my daughter into the street, incredibly dangerous, so I did not invite him. This was an a-hole free event, and that kid is exactly that. The neighbor was gone when the party started, but she returned home at the very end. Right after everyone had left, a social worker and cops show up and tell us that someone called CPS and my husband has been accused of raping our daughter. By the way, sorry, I cannot say that on YouTube, and the daughter is 6 years old. This was crushing to me and even more crushing to him. My husband is a wonderful human being, a wonderful father to our children, and he has never done anything like that ever. Of that I have absolutely no doubt. So we speak with the social worker and cop. And they cannot tell me who called the tip in, but based on the time it was called in and the fact that the neighbor left when the cops pulled up, it was obvious. Also, the threats she has made was telltale, but I will get to that. I fill them in on everything that has occurred in the last few months with this neighbor, and they decide this case is bullcrap, but due to the severity of the allegations, they still have to investigate. I tell them whatever has to be done with this, we will do everything we can to cooperate. My husband cannot sleep in our home until at least Tuesday now, and the social workers are cutting as many corners as they are legally allowed to cut to streamline things along and be done with it. Additionally, the cop went over and informed the neighbors that if they made any kind of contact with us whatsoever for any reason, they would be brought up on charges of harassment. I have notified our landlord of the situation and all of the other ones, and his sentiment remains,
"Keep me out of it. We like having you guys here and we like having them. So do what you think is best."
because I said either they need to go or we are. I don't want to move, we like our home, we like the neighborhood, and my child has friends and loves her school. I am willing to fight for my home. Here is the thing I want to know, can I sue this woman, like for slander? Please keep reading. I ask this because this woman has also gone around the neighborhood telling other neighbors that we beat our children, neglect our daughter, and that she's trying to get us evicted so she can take custody of my kids. Note, if anything happened to us ever, she would go with her grandparents or biological father, and her husband has a recent assault/domestic violent arrest. She is delusional. I have 2 neighbors willing to give notarized or in-person testimony of the things this woman has said about us. We are not child beaters, and my husband is not a child rapist. We are good parents who want to live quietly and enjoy life in our home. We don't even believe in spanking kids unless something dangerous/extreme has been done. We had some concerns about my daughter's explosiveness, and we go to therapy to help us find ways to understand and deal with it in a proactive way that benefits all of us. We are damn good parents. These things are serious claims that have the potential to ruin our lives. She is subjecting my children to trauma and upsetting their stability. I had to explain to my daughter why these people need to inspect her and question her today, and she was devastated that someone could say things like that about her dad. She is heartbroken that he cannot sleep in our home. He has never spent a single night away from our son since he's been born. This is heartbreaking for him. I cannot prove that she made that call today, but I have proof that she has threatened to. I also have witnesses about her making those child-beating claims and possibly physical proof as well, text messages the person is checking to see if they still have them. I wish so badly that people like this woman would face punishment when her claims are proven false and ill-willed, but since she will get away with it and the landlord refuses to deal with anything that he could on his end, I need to send her a message that we don't F around or take this lightly. If there's any ground for me to work on, I know that I need to tread carefully here. I need suggestions, tips, advice, help, opinions, etc. My family cannot live like this. Once she screws us over, she will move on to her next victim if nothing gets done about it. And a person in the comments said, I am not a lawyer, but as of November 2013, in Kentucky, filling a false child abuse report is considered a misdemeanor or similar. Someone at CPS in your area may be able to help you further. Not sure if you can sue her, but if you can, prove she knowingly filled this false report, she may be in legal trouble. And another person said, you can consult a lawyer about what actions you can take. Lawyers don't usually take cases like this on contingency, and defamation is very hard to prove. It could end up being costly, and even if you win, unless she has a lot of assets, it could be difficult to collect. By suing her, you will also be giving her the attention she seems to want, and you will be forced into spending even more time thinking about and dealing with her. If CPS finds these allegations are unfounded, her credibility will be very low if she should try to do the same thing again. Wow guys, I gotta say this would probably also fit the neighbors from hell category, because damn, this is probably the worst neighbor I've ever read about. If you were in this absolutely unfortunate spot, what would you do in order to deal with this woman? Let us know what you would do in the comments. And by the way, while you're at it, please don't forget to like the video and post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support me. Thank you so much, Ripe Stars. Update to the awful neighbor story. I posted a week ago about my neighbor who came home and possibly filed a CPS report claiming my husband violated our own daughter, and I got a lot of good information/advice, and I would like to share what is the case as of now because there have been some juicy developments in the story. While the police were at our home that Saturday, I had called my landlord really ticked off because in my mind I was the target of harassment by the other tenant, and I knew what all had gone down with another neighbor, and I really did not want to end up in that woman's position. I was not able to talk at length with him since there was an officer and social worker interviewing my husband privately, but I let him know what was going on and left it at that. The detective told me before he left that he would get a hold of them and tell them that they are not to contact us. Obviously, they were not home when the social worker and detective were there, so he could not tell them. I received about 6 texts in a row that night from the neighbor, freaking out about a detective's note being wedged in the door of her house and one wedged in the door of the other neighbors, the one friend she has on this street door, and asking me if
something happened.
Because girl she framed
Got out of jail that same day.
while she was not home. I did not answer. I'm sure her freaking out had more to do with the possibility she might get caught for making false police reports. At least I hope so, because I told the detective she did. Also, I have since personally spoken to this woman that my neighbor ruined the life of, and she's looking into appealing or withdrawing her guilty plea if it is possible, and we've agreed to give any statements/show any messages that she might need us to if it will help her. The next morning, Sunday, my husband took my car to his airsoft game and I was outside telling him he might need gas, and they came outside and tried to lecture us for the way my husband had parked. He parked in the middle of the street parking in front of our house so that they would have a hard time parking without hitting his car. He was mad and it was just silly petty revenge. We blatantly ignored them, did not even look at them to their faces, and they scoffed and went inside. It is public parking and they were just mad that they could not park one of their 3 cars there like they like to do. Even though they have a driveway that can fit 2 cars, they can only park one at a time in it. The next day was Memorial Day and we were going to my aunt's home to go swimming, so I took my daughter to a nearby store to pick up new arm floaties. When we got back, we got out of the car and my daughter burst into hysterical tears. She pointed to the roof and almost at the top where the point was, I was able to see one of her toys that she had been playing with prior to going to the store up there. Someone threw her toy on the roof. I pretty much narrowed it down really fast. It was on the neighbor's side of the roof and their kids are 5 and 2. And there's no way a 5-year-old threw a toy what is over 2 stories high. We have a 2-story building and the roof is pretty pointy and tall. If the 5-year-old did manage it, then someone needs to get that kid into the NFL pronto, is all I'm saying. But I know better, my husband thinks it was her husband. Anyways, I called the landlord, told him about it, and asked if he had some kind of tall ladder or something we could use when he next came out to mow the lawn. On that phone call, I brought up the situation with the neighbor, gave him more information. I told him that we don't feel safe in our home anymore and that these things she's doing is ruining people's lives and that this is a complaint for their disruptive behavior, so he needs to address it. He took his
"We don't want to get involved"
stance again and actually hung up on me. I was pissed, but I cannot make him talk to me on the phone. A social worker was supposed to come out Tuesday to finish things up and never called or showed, and then Tuesday came and I could not get into contact with her. Thursday I spoke with her finally and she told me that she cannot make it out until Wednesday of this week, but we could resume life as normal. Basically my husband could sleep in our house again and I did not need to find someone to babysit him while I am at work so he could be with the kids. The landlord came out this last Friday to mow the lawn and I saw the neighbor leave, so I ran outside and gave him a rent check. We were standing right in front of my cameras, which record when anyone steps into the frame, and it records audio too. I told him CPS had determined the case bogus and let us return to normal. He then informed me of the following. The day of my daughter's party, he received a bunch of texts from the neighbor and he stated he's been receiving texts similar to these for months with these claims of assault and abuse. His wife, who's a nurse for the major hospital around here, saw these messages and said she had to call because she could not take the risk that it was true, so she called the hotline and told them that she was told by the other tenant that my husband assaults my daughter and she has bruises, but that she cannot vouch for the validity of these claims and that there was currently a birthday party going on at that very moment for our daughter, so could they please at least wait until the party was over to go in. This was just after 2 p.m. when the neighbor had returned home and saw this party going on, and I never told the landlord we were having a party at all at any point. I also never told the landlord that he was recorded confessing all of those things because I don't have to tell him. So this morning I called the detective. I told him that our landlord had come forward after he was told that the claims to CPS were determined bogus. I told him everything the landlord said. I told him I had everything he said on camera from my security cameras. He, the detective, told me that he's been trying to get in touch with the neighbor for a week. He's left his car twice, he has called, but the number they had for her no longer worked. He has stopped by their house a few times, confirmed by my husband, and they would not answer the door. They've done nothing but dodge him. He asked for the numbers I had for her and her husband, and I gave them to him. He then called me back and said they did not answer, but he left messages. I had talked to my husband who is home right before he called, and my husband confirmed that all of their cars were there and he could hear them moving around in the house, so I told the detective that they were home. He said he would go back out there and call me back. He also informed me that if I really want to, I could go speak with the district attorney. He gave me the name, about possibly filing harassment charges against them, or possibly even just some kind of protective restraining type order. I don't know how well what I have would stand up, so I am trying to decide whether or not it is worth our time to look into it. I am getting the hunch that this woman is some kind of psycho/sociopath, and when I read this, I don't know how accurate it is, it really triggered my suspicion, which is concerning to say the least. And a user in the comments said, "Thanks for the update. Personally, I think you should pursue charges. I worked CPS for 5 years. People like your neighbor don't stop. Also, they need to know that their actions have consequences. They turned your life upside down. Your kids had to talk to the police and CPS about things of a sexual nature. Although when I talk to kids about it, I worked hard to cause as little trauma as possible, it is still hard on kids. So in my opinion, stick it to them so that they learn that their actions are illegal, immoral, and have consequences. Maybe their children will also learn this lesson and won't grow up to be little annoying brats." Wow guys, and I gotta say, this story is an absolute roller coaster of emotions. And indeed, it definitely seems like this woman has some sort of mental issues, because this is definitely not normal behavior, even for a crazy neighbor. And another update to the crazy neighbor story. Since my last post with them calling CPS and all that, things have gotten crazy. Let's see, at 11 PM a few days ago, their kids, while their parents were outside watching them, were ringing our doorbell a bunch of times and then running off, doing this repeatedly. I have an infant and a 6-year-old who is already in bed at that hour, and I also go to bed before then since I wake up early. I called the police this time, and I have a copy of the incident log which includes the fact that they were told by the police that they are not to have any contact with us. A few weeks later I was cleaning my car because I am doing a straight trade with someone and their friends a few houses down. The ones who always collaborate their stories called the police and tried to claim that I had killed someone because I was
cleaning my car with Clorox.
Well, I was not cleaning my car with Clorox at all, just Windex, regular car cleaning wipes and some Spot Shot. The cops left laughing about the whole thing. Well, this one is the big one that we actually put in a criminal complaint for. My dog, who is always on her line in our shared fenced-in backyard, per the landlord's request, actually broke this link that hooks to her collar and had been off her line laying in the shade, not bothering anyone. My husband saw this on our camera and brought her inside. 20 minutes later, the husband, call him P, next door comes over and knocked on the door, and my husband answered. P started cursing my husband out about the dog being off her line, and my husband said, "Sorry, I think she broke the link," and shut the door in his face. He then proceeded to bang on our door, threatening to wring my husband's neck for talking to his son. The day prior, my husband had actually really nicely asked their son to stop kicking a soccer ball into my car that I just had body work done on. This left dents in the door as well as a dirty shoe print. My husband called 911 while this was happening. 911 could hear this guy banging on the door. So the cops showed up and P told the cops that my husband was inside, saying he was
loading his gun and going to kill him.
Which is totally false, and the same thing they said about the other neighbor down the street, and we don't even own any firearms. My husband owned some airsoft guns but never threatened anyone with those. At the end, the cops did nothing and told us we could go down to the prosecutor's office and file a complaint if we want, but to keep in mind that their side of the story is on the incident log too. On Tuesday, we went down and filed a criminal complaint on Phil for the harassment and threats and gave pictures of the damage to our door. We have yet to hear back because of the holiday, so I am hoping that it will pan out or something. Well, in addition to all of that, we have been constantly complaining that the neighbors keep their dog off a line or a leash of any kind, which they are supposed to comply with too, just as we are. They have also kept the cat living in their sight, and that cat was supposed to be gone ages ago, and it is not. I've let the landlord know exactly what time I've seen these complaints, as well as documented them on our security cameras. Additionally, he has said that he was going to require my dog to have a muzzle since she barks, but I refused and said I would put a barking collar on her, and he said he would require the neighbors to put one on theirs to make it fair. They have not complied, so we have not either. I have months of messages between the landlord and us saved with all of our complaints. Another fun tidbit, we were told we could not put in a playset when we moved in, but the neighbors put up a large swing set. When I complained, the landlord said he changed his mind and that we were both allowed to pick one play unit for the backyard. We opted to not put one up at all. I walked back there today and saw a playhouse and a playset, so he's a totally lying, unfair sack of crap. We already knew this, but now it is real. Anyways, today I received a really unofficial looking notice of eviction. And it states that it is because we are disturbing the peace of our neighbors, which can only be because our dog barks, but I have an entire conversation with the other neighbors on the house to our left who state that our dog never bothers anyone. Additionally, we bring our dog in every time she starts barking. We have also received 0 notices of complaints about anything concerning us disturbing anyone. He dated the letter for the 2nd. On June 30th he came by and took checks for both July and August rents. We are going to be on vacation from July 30th until August 12th, so I kind of want to fight this. Yes, we do intend to move regardless, but I feel like he's going about this all wrong, and if there's something I can do, I want to. Any advice would be appreciated. Edit, landlord texted me last night and said that while he is very upset with the neighbors, he chose to send that notice because my husband allegedly threatened to kill P with a gun, and he has a copy of the incident report that says P reported that he threatened him on it. My husband never threatened P, and the same incident log states P admitted to coming to our door, and it states P threatened my husband. So guys, essentially that is how the story ends. Unfortunately, there's no further update, so it seems in the end the landlord evicted them, but that wasn't that bad to be honest, because they wanted to move anyway, but still a very unpleasant situation for sure. And guys, this marks the end of the first part of the video. The second part is gonna be comprised of a set of older stories that some of you might have heard already if you are a loyal subscriber. However, if you are new to the channel, these stories will be new for you as well. Can I marry my potential stepsister? About 4 months ago, I proposed to my girlfriend. We had been dating for several years and she accepted. We started planning for our wedding soon after and sent out invitations a couple weeks ago. Me and my mother don't get along and I went no contact with her a year ago, but today she called me and told me that we could not get married. I asked why, and she said she is dating my girlfriend's father and that once they got married we would have to separate since incest is illegal and she would be my stepsister. I asked my girlfriend when she got home and she asked her father. It turns out that they have been dating for almost a year now, and although he has known me for several years, he did not realize he was dating my mother because my mother has the last name of her most recent husband. She's been married 5 times. I was fathered by her second husband. He showed my mother the wedding invitation and I guess she decided to break the news to me before him. My girlfriend and I love each other and we both want to stay together, but we are worried there might be a shotgun wedding to prevent us from getting married. My potential stepfather has said he will have to collect his feelings to figure out how to approach this. He said he wasn't planning on proposing anytime soon, but we are worried my mother might pressure him into this to try and spite me now that she knows about his daughter and I. I hope that he breaks up with her, but if they are indeed a match, it is a horrible thought to want them to be separated. If our parents get married first, will we be unable to? Would there be any consequences if we were to have children without getting married if we are step-siblings? If we were to marry first, would it still be fine for our parents to marry later on? Should we just go to wherever they do marriage licenses and get married now, but still do the ceremony in a few months as originally planned? Or are we doomed to be forcibly separated regardless? Edit, I'm in New York, sorry. Edit again, thank you guys so much for the advice. We are so happy that we don't have to worry about this anymore, but getting married at the courthouse or wherever they do marriage licenses before then is likely what we will do for peace of mind. And seeing as our 4th year anniversary is coming up next week, we will probably do it then. So, people in the comments suggested, there is no law against marrying a step-sibling, it is not a blood-relative relationship. See this, it is not incest, so there's no legal, moral or biological problem with marrying. It is similar to a sister marrying a brother-in-law, just because the words sister and brother are used to describe a relationship by marriage, that doesn't make it illegal or even wrong. And now we will read an update to the stepsister story. So, it has been a wild week. I would have posted this sooner, but I was spending Thanksgiving with my now wife and her father. We got married this week with my now father-in-law as witness, and my father-in-law has now separated from my mother after learning what an insane, manipulative piece of crap she was. With this weight lifted from our shoulders, we are the typical honeymoon phase lovebirds you would expect, except we have not even had our honeymoon yet. But it is not all good news. Since my mother called me, she realized I did not know her work number, so after my father-in-law told her it was over, she called me repeatedly and harassed me about how I was
Ruining her life.
and that she would file for divorce on our behalf, and insisted you all were wrong about step-siblings being allowed to marry, until I finally figured out how to block that number. She also borrowed someone else's phone and called me on that, so I blocked that number too. She has not tried any other phones yet, but I expect she will until I change my number again. My father-in-law is also sad over all this. He said leaving her was the smart thing to do and for the best, but he's having a hard time coping. I don't blame him, of course, but I know I would feel like crap if I was in the same situation. At least he did not have to see my mom at her worst. So, thank you all for all of your advice. My wife and I are very happy about starting a family next year after we get married in our church. I'm glad I did not rush into marriage like my mother. She got divorced and married another guy in the same year when I was 10 years old, and we feel we made the right call, getting the marriage license out of the way now so she can start the name change process before the wedding. I've been compiling phone numbers to call since my wife is taking my last name, and I never realized just how much work this involves. Have a great rest of your Thanksgiving, guys. And the next one is titled, Our neighbor told us he had killed 7 people. Roommate is freaking out and wants to move. What are our options here? Alright, I will try and lay this out simply. Thanks in advance for advice. I moved into an apartment with one of my friends. For personal reasons we had to move quickly, and we found what looked like a nice place for about $650 a month. $325 split between the two of us, not including the cost of utilities. As far as housing costs go in our area, this is pretty cheap, and we were happy to be able to find something. It was not in a bad location and the building itself is sound, but we maybe were not as thorough about getting to know the other tenants as we should have been. Roommate had been getting along with our downstairs neighbor, was talking with him on Sunday after church. He asked her how the services went, she asked him if he went to any of the local parishes, he expressed sadness about some terrible events in his past and how he felt like he could have never set foot in a house of God again. Roommate, thinking that this was run-of-the-mill anguish about some kind of accident or mundane past transgression, tried to assure him that forgiveness was for everyone, all that jazz. He responded not for him that he had killed at least 7 people, maybe more, and done other terrible, not elaborated upon things, implied sexual assault. Rumi nods politely, tells him she's very sorry to hear that and quickly excuses herself from the conversation. Calls me 5 minutes later, absolutely losing her shit over the phone. I rush home and sit with her through probably the biggest panic attack I've ever seen. I considered calling an ambulance for her several times, but after about 10 minutes she could function again. I asked once she had calmed down if she thought he could have been joking with her. She thought seriously about it and said no. He had seemed genuinely upset when he said it and not sarcastic or deadpan. Our next door neighbor, let's call him Mike, comes over shortly after asking if everything was okay. We tell him what happens and he tells us that our downstairs neighbor had told him the same thing in largely the same context. Mike had actually called the police about it last year, but he said they came and ran his license, and when that did not produce any outstanding warrants, they left. So at this point, our downstairs neighbor is either terrible at jokes, mentally ill, or a serial killer. Roommate is not having any of this, she wants to move. I know we have no legal grounds to break the lease, so we would be paying double rent until the landlord re-rents the apartment to someone else. I could feasibly afford this, roommate cannot. I offered to stay here and absorb full cost of rent while she looks for other housing. I'm still leaning on bad at jokes as an explanation for all this, but then again I was not there when he said it. However, she is panicky, and after this the idea of trying to room with a stranger sends her stress through the roof just about as badly as living here does. We are about 4 months in on a year-long lease. Honestly, I'm not really comfortable living here after this, but I'm more okay with toughing it out until the lease is up and then moving. Unfortunately, this is a mental health issue for Rumi as she struggles with PTSD, and I think this apartment would be literally unlivable for her now. Even if he's not actually a murderer, schizophrenia or behavior that resembles schizophrenia is one of her major triggers. Is this something we can bring up with our landlord? Is there any kind of leniency we could ask for with regards to breaking the lease? Would finding potential new tenants before we move out be a possible solution so that at most we only owe maybe 2 months rent instead of 8? Would it be worth it to make another police report just so they know he's been saying this to more than one person, or would that be a waste of everyone's time? And guys, please let me know in the comments what you would do in this situation. Would you call the police again, or would you just tough it through like OP said? A user in the comments suggested this. If I were your landlord, I would tell you to just not talk to that neighbor anymore and not to bother me over such stupid things. You can ask for leniency for breaking the lease, but not liking a neighbor who has not caused you any harm is not really grounds for a landlord to do so. Finding new tenants could lower the amount of penalty you have to pay, but that depends entirely on the wording of your lease. Why bother the police? He has not committed a crime that you are capable of proving and would be wasting their time. And guys, I gotta say, I'm not sure if I can agree with this comment. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. And now we will read the update to the crazy neighbor story. Alright, so things got absolutely crazy and I could not update. So here is how it shook out. We went to our landlord asking if there was another unit available for use to move into in the same complex because we were having some difficulties with our downstairs neighbor. After reading over the lease, requesting a room or building change is allowed for just about any reason as long as there is space available. We might have wound up with slightly higher rent, but not so much higher that it would have caused financial problems. Landlord is confused, says the apartment below us is being rented by a woman, not a man. We come to find out she's actually been letting him stay there against the terms of her lease. He was her boyfriend or something. Not entirely sure what happened next, but I'm assuming landlord went and had words with her because he vanishes for 2 weeks. Yay! Come back home a couple days ago, find police cars and an ambulance in front of our building. Turns out he came back and tried to strangle her, one of her kids called 911 and the police managed to get him off of her. She returns the next day, I bring her a casserole, I don't know, it seemed neighborly, and apologize because honestly had no idea it was going to snowball like this. She tells me not to worry, he was always kind of an abusive ass and he's definitely looking at jail time. Apparently, upon doing a more thorough background check, the police discovered he's been using someone else's stolen identity. And 3 guesses what kind of warrant they found when they ran the right information. Her understanding it was drug-related crime, so not like deliberate serial murder, but more like things turning ugly in a room full of people. Either way, I'm glad he's not coming back. Rumi is high-strung, but I'm optimistic that things will settle back down and she will be able to breathe properly in about a month. I spent all night last night trying to find a news article to link to, but either my Google foo is weak or this somehow managed to slip under the radar of the local press, which is a shame because I wanted to prove this happened, if only because this is going to be such a wild story to tell at parties. And guys, I'm curious, did you ever have a neighbor that was comparable to this one? Maybe not a serial killer, but just slightly crazy? Let us know in the comments. And the next one is titled, "My teenage daughter was sexually assaulted while visiting her father for the summer." Hi everyone, thank you in advance for any help you can provide. My ex and I divorced 10 years ago, we have a 14-year-old daughter and joint custody, though she spends the school year in SoCal, Southern California I guess, with me, and the summer in Maine with her father. Our divorce was not amicable, but I do everything in my power to keep it from affecting our daughter and have not told her about my reasons for wanting a divorce out of an interest of not poisoning her relationship with her father. She arrived home this morning and she looked pale and was shaking and in tears. After asking her what was wrong, she handed me a letter from my ex's mother. Apparently my daughter
was acting like a slut
and dressing
inappropriately
in front of her cousins, and her 19-year-old cousin sexually assaulted her. The letter was telling me how I am supposed to change how I am raising my daughter to prevent promiscuity. She has always been a crazy Bible-thumping weirdo, so I ignored it. I took my daughter home and immediately called my ex, asking him to send me the forms so that I can have copies of her medical records from being sent to the hospital, sent to her doctor, and ask for the name and number of whichever police officer is handling her case. He informed me that he decided not to press charges because our daughter
was being a slut
and she needs to know she's not going to be rewarded with attention for that kind of behavior. I am livid. It has been 4 weeks since the event happened and they did not permit her to call me that whole time. I wish I had given her the cell phone I had waiting at home before she left, but I had intended it as a "you are starting high school" gift and thought it would be best to wait. I want to press charges and see the aggressor punished to the fullest extent of the law. I would also like to see about amending our custody agreement so that she does not ever have to go see that effed up side of her family again. I'm so angry right now, I cannot think straight and she's taking a nap. What do I need to do? Who do I need to call? And a user in the comments said, absolutely call the police. I would also talk to a lawyer and look at getting custody taken away as soon as possible. Also, save that letter, it will be important for both cases. I gotta be honest guys, that is certainly one of the most infuriating stories we have read in a long time. Let me know in the comments how would you handle that situation. And now we will read the update to the teenage daughter's story. Well, it has been a busy day and it is barely 8:30. Christ. Yesterday afternoon, after I made my post, which admittedly helped calm my rage, just posting it, I called her gynecologist. I have uterine issues, so I got her a gyno to get checked for them once she started her period. She was very understanding and offered to stay late if I wanted to bring my daughter in that evening. So I called the police, let them know I was taking her to an appointment at her gyno that evening as well, so we could coordinate. My daughter was a bit hesitant to go see the doctor, but understood when I explained that we needed to make sure she was not pregnant and did not have any damage that went uncared for because her father refused to get her medical attention. The doctor said she's physically fine, pending the results of the STI tests, and she asked to be put on birth control for peace of mind. Though I know this is traumatic for her and her father's family is a bunch of goddamn nutjobs, I'm glad they did not get into her head enough that she would be afraid to ask for that kind of protection. After the doctor's appointment, we went home and ordered pizza, and a detective arrived around 8 PM. He sat down with my daughter in our living room while I hung out in my office after making sure she was okay being alone with him. Didn't want her to not tell him something for fear I would hear it. The detective told me before he left that this is a serious matter and he would be contacting me with information about anyone in Maine I needed to speak to. I made a few copies of the letter and scanned it in, then gave him the original and emailed him a digital copy. He left a big folder with a bunch of victim advocacy groups information in it. He also told me to get a restraining order for her against her father's family. After he left, we sat down and set up her new cell phone, and she went on Facebook and blocked her father's family as they had started posting victim blaming bullcrap to her wall. Within an hour, my phone was ringing with my ex demanding that I make our daughter unblock him since apparently he has decided he has a right to be on her Facebook. I told him to only contact me through my attorney and hung up. This morning I got a call back from my attorney even though he is on vacation. His assistant heard my message and contacted him about it since it seemed more pressing than most other matters, and he called me to reassure me that he will handle it, and since we divorced in CA, the custody arrangement is in CA and it will be amended in CA since CA is her state of residency and in CA they take a real-time view of this kind of stuff. He also told me at 14, no judge he knows of would tell her she had to go visit her father, much less in this situation. I have an appointment for her with a trauma counselor. The detective recommended this afternoon and took the day off work so that I could help her as needed. Right now, she's mostly been playing World of Warcraft and eating junk food, but I feel like at least right now, I'm not going to tell her when she needs to go to bed or police her health choices. I want to thank you all for your excellent advice and support. I will do my best to keep you updated as the situation unfolds, but my conversation with the detective and my attorney leads me to believe that while the custody amendment will not take too long, the criminal proceedings may take longer as they are complicated by the fact the victim lives in one state and the crime occurred in a different state. And now we will read the final update to the teenage daughter story. Thought I would post a quick update. My attorney spoke with my ex-husband's attorney and I don't know what words were exchanged, but my ex agreed to the amended custody agreement, so she no longer has to see him. He made a big stink about how he is
not paying child support anymore,
but I'm not very worried about it. I make enough that it is not really a concern, and I've lurked this sub enough to know that just because he does not have visitation does not mean he gets out of paying child support. I am a vindicative bitch, so if he is late on a single payment, I plan to pursue it as far as I can. As far as the guy that assaulted my daughter, I know very little other than it is an ongoing investigation, but that they will contact me when more information is available. I'm pretty sure he's been arrested as I received a lovely email from my ex-mother-in-law rambling about how I am destroying her grandson's life, blah blah blah. I really don't care, I've blocked her and my daughter has all of them blocked, so as far as I am concerned they can die in a fire at the bottom of a well. My daughter is doing well. She has joined a LARP group. Sorry, I don't know what it is. They play something like Dungeons and Dragons, but in costumes with fake weapons, and seems to be bouncing back well. Not having to deal with her father or his family anymore seems to have lifted a weight off her shoulders. She's seeing a therapist regularly though, as I know from my own bouts of depression that just because you seem fine does not mean you are. I wanted to extend my thanks to everyone in this sub for how supportive and kind you have been through what is a very difficult time for my family. It was very helpful to have people able to calmly and clearly explain what my options were and what to expect when I was too angry to think straight. And guys, unfortunately, we have already reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and if you haven't already, please also go to patreon.com/ripeyoutube, where I upload exclusive Reddit videos starting at just $3 a month. This is a great way to support me in case you are interested. and the chance for me to become independent from YouTube revenue. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.